What's up, everybody? It's just Cameron here, back again with another video. Today I am bringing you a video. This is sooner than I expected to make this video, but I finished the kit, the TLR 22X4, and I just wanted to make a video kind of, while it's still fresh on my mind, kind of my overall thoughts on the build, on the kit. The good, the bad, what I'd like to see changed, would I recommend this to a new person, so on and so forth. Just to start off, I do want to say I would consider myself a intermediate at best as far as the wrenching aspect of working on these things go. This was my first kit. My 5.0 was a roller that I have essentially rebuilt into an Elite. But yes, this is my first from the ground kit build. I will say it probably took me probably 12 hours total from start to finish. The first session, I did a lot the first day, and then the next couple days I kind of spread out. I probably could have done it in about, if I wanted to really get through it, probably 8 or 10. But about 12 hours, I would say. And I would say that's probably about what you'd expect if you are a beginner or new to doing a kit. So let's get right into it. And I also want to say, before I go into this, I'm not sponsored by TLR. But I do love their products. I consider myself a TLR driver from the aspect of, that's what I like to drive. So it is going to be a little biased in that aspect, but I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. This kit is also essentially stock. There's a few exceptions, and I'll go over those when I get to them. So starting off, let's go with the tires since they're out here. These are just Proline Positron and Electrons. MC Compound. These are just a solid dirt indoor clay tire. Pretty standard. Now, one of those things that is not stock on this is the body. So I messed up my paint job on the kit body. It's not bad. It's probably good enough to run as like a practice or just a throwaway body, but I was not happy with how the paint job turned out. So I went ahead and ordered a Proline body. So this is just the Proline Axis. I did it with the PS46 translucent paint, same as my 22.5. As you can see here, it's the same paint scheme. I love this paint. I think it's just awesome. And one cool thing about the Proline body is it has this little, you can kind of see it here, this little ridge, this little, I don't know what you'd call it, but it gives it a little bit more clearance for the servo horn. The stock body does not have that, and certain servo horns will interfere with the body. So that's one nice thing about the Proline Axis. I'm not sure if the other brands' bodies have that, but that's one nice thing about the Proline body. I also have the Proline wing just because I feel like it looks better, a little bit lower as well. So I think I'm going to start off with like the negative aspects of the build, just to get them out of the way. Overall, guys, I love this build. I had a great time. I think it's an invaluable experience. I think it was very... I learned a lot, and I'm very confident now in this car. It's one of those things you kind of, you see a part, kind of what it does in your mind, but when you actually build it from a bag of bolts into a part and you see how it works entirely, it kind of opens your eyes and it gives you a new understanding. I think that's what the kit really does. But there was some things that I did not like with this build. I'll just be honest. There, pretty much any time I was screwing into plastic, not all the time, but most of the time, the plastic threading was not ideal. And I know that's something that's going to be a problem amongst all kits. But some of the stuff, I don't know, some of it was very touchy. In particular, the shock standoffs on the rear. I should have taken these tires off. I'll go ahead and take one off. Maybe you can see it a little better. Give me 1 second here. But the shock standoffs, it's like a long screw that goes into the A-arm, and then from there you mount the shock onto it. But the threading was so it wasn't. I'm not entirely sure what the problem with it was. If it was just a bad mold, if it was, maybe it could have been the screw itself. But basically, anytime I had to go into plastic, I had a headache on my hand. So it's basically this screw right here. They go into the arm, and then you put the shock on top of it, and then you nut it. You put this nut to top it to tighten it down. Both sides of this were almost impossible to get on, and I ruined my driver doing it. I wasn't using my MIP driver because it was just kind of an awkward angle to get in there. So I had my smaller, like, interchangeable this style kit driver, and it completely just broke the spring that locks it in. So I don't know. Yeah, that could have been, maybe there's a trick to it. Maybe I could have greased it, but this would be rare that there's going to be some frustration when it comes to drilling into the plastic molds. So just be ready for that if you're going to get into this. I'm sure that's something that is just part of it. But that was definitely something that was a negative in my experience. As far as other negatives, there wasn't much, guys. I'm trying to be objective here. I think overall the build was awesome. Another thing, again, this is just kind of, maybe it's wishful thinking. But this kit was about $600 after tax. I think it was like $615. And I chipped a bearing trying to put one on the plastic case, the diff case. I wasn't pushing down super hard. But it was one of like the inner housing ones, so you can't really like just push down evenly. And I chipped it trying to drive it in there. And it would have been nice to have a couple extra bearings maybe in the kit. It wouldn't have killed them. So that would have been nice to have. But unfortunately, I chipped a bearing, and it was like really early on in the build. So that is one of the upgrades I did. I put on a Trinity ceramic bearing set. I only did the internals with the ceramics just because I think that was mainly what would be important to put on ceramics. I think I was going to use regular like sealed bearings on the wheels and stuff that you have to clean more often. Plus, this was not for a TLR. This is actually one of my dad's extra kits he had for his Associated. So not all the bearings fit, but I did get all the internals are ceramic. So that's the only other thing that is not stock on this kit. Everything else is complete stock. Besides that, guys, I think most of that is pretty much it. So if you're going into this build, I would say don't even bother unless you have a solid set of MIP tools, particularly a 1.5 and a 2.0 millimeter driver. I wouldn't even attempt it without a high quality tool. Luckily, I had them, so it wasn't too bad. But I can't even imagine doing this without a decent set of tools. And also, I would go ahead and, if you want to do a bearing upgrade, get bearings. They're expensive. Or you can just have a few on hand. Because basically, it was a plastic thing. Anytime I was putting a bearing into plastic, it was brutally hard. I was using a washer just to push it down evenly, and that helped a little bit. But even then, it was just an insane amount of effort putting them onto the plastic like housings. So just keep that in mind. That could have just been my experience, a one-off thing. I don't know. But I think other than that, guys, I think the build went together pretty well. It was pretty smooth, pretty seamless. As far as the manual goes, I do like a lot the way they had it set up as far as the steps. So you start off, the first thing you do is the diffs, then the turnbuckles, and then the shocks. So the first three things you do are going to be the three most tedious steps, right? It's kind of the most time-consuming and kind of the most, I think tedious is a good way to put it. They're not something that everybody loves to do. But when you're fresh in the build, your mind's fresh. It's good to get those things out of the way, and then it's just smooth sailing from there. So I do like how they have the kit set up as far as the manual steps. Now for the manual itself, it's not for everybody. I think it's pretty clear for the most part. There are a few steps that it's kind of tricky, man. You have to really know. I think for a first timer, a lot of the stuff in here is kind of hard to understand. I was finding myself with certain steps, like once I got it together, then the instructions made sense, as opposed to looking at the instructions and saying, oh, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, so I think for some people, this is going to be like just awesome, the manual. If you're really good at like reading diagrams, you'll have no problem with it. But if you're somebody who likes to, have stuff kind of, spoken to you as far as like very clearly, you might want to have a build guide video up, which is what I did. I had the TLR, the Frank Root build guide, and I pretty much just had it on the step because he did it by bag each video, and I just played that along. as I went for the parts that I really didn't know what I was doing. And that helped a lot. So I would highly recommend that. It's just on the Team Losi Racing YouTube. Check that out, guys. That's going to be a great help for this. They also, I think they have them for most of the newer kits. So I'd highly recommend having that at least available so that if you have a step that you're stuck on, having somebody doing it and seeing them do it might help you out. One other, so I'm going to get into the good things now. The build quality on these parts, I was just blown away. I knew the Elite kit had a lot of upgrade parts, but this thing is, there's carbon fiber everywhere. There's aluminum steering pretty much everywhere. You have the aluminum axle. I don't know what you'd call these little housings. This thing is just decked out in upgrade parts. And it made, the plastic not as big of an issue because most of it wasn't plastic. Just awesome upgrade parts in this thing. And I had no issues with any of any of the aluminum, or the hardware. I had no strip screws throughout the entire build. Everything was really good quality. Everything went together really well. Shocks were basically flawless putting together. It was a little bit tricky doing them. I have built shocks before, but these were a little more tricky. It's just they're a lot smaller than like something like my Rustler or whatever, when you're rebuilding those types of shocks. But it was a pretty seamless process when it comes to like the actual parts themselves. Another pro, I think I love just the way that the way the chassis comes together. It's kind of an interesting design. And at first I was a little concerned because the way it works is you use the left side of the chassis is as normal. You just bolt it down, the mud guards to the chassis. But the way it works on this side, the right side, is the battery spacers are essentially what mounts the chassis into the mud guard. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. We get this off. So coming with the kit, you're going to have a handful of different battery spacers, depending on which size of LiPo you're running. I'm just using the standard one, so you just use this little plastic tab you put in here, and you just screw that screw into the chassis, and that's kind of what locks into place. There's also different size tabs. There's another one of these to put on this side to fine-tune your battery size, and that's how the chassis comes together as well. So it's a pretty smooth. I don't know. Again, this is my first kit, so maybe they're all like that. But it was really, to me, it was really intuitive. And it worked out really well, in my opinion. Obviously, this is just a roller, guys. I haven't put any electronics in it. I haven't put the servo in it. I haven't ran it. So this is just a pure build, like kit, out of the box, done review. So I don't know, obviously, this stuff might change once I run the car. But that's kind of my thinking of it now. The battery mount itself, I don't know. It doesn't, I've heard good things about it, but it's not the most convincing thing, right? Like just two carbon fiber tabs holding your battery in place. But, I guess it should be fine. I will report back if I have any issues. But it should be fine. Yeah, you just tighten these screws down. There's also different heights on this little post. So if you want to run a low battery, there's a little lower extended post that you can just slap in a LiPo, a different LiPo. The one downside to that, as opposed to having something like a strap or even like a mount bar, which I might change to be honest, is you can't really change a battery on the fly. It's going to be more of a time-consuming thing to change the battery size if it's not the same size. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, that was my kind of experience with that. I did like that aspect of it. Also, I like how the way sorry about that, guys. I love the way the diffs came together. I think these are going to be really easy to maintain. The way they're kind of, I think it's going to be really easy to get in there and work on them if you need to. As opposed to some of the other cars that, especially at 5.0, it's like you got to take apart the whole rear end assembly to get to it. And obviously, it's still going to be a pain to get in there, but I think for the most part, the way they have it built is pretty easy to get into it. But I'm excited, guys. I'm so excited to get this thing on the track. Here's the front suspension. I'll show you guys. Little front wing there. I did paint it black. I wish I wouldn't have now, but the carbon fiber shock towers, of course. Titanium turnbuckles. This thing is is loaded, guys. It also comes with the receiver plate, carbon fiber, and the ESC mounting plate. The servo mount is also carbon fiber. You don't really see it. I just haven't had my servo yet, so I haven't put that on. So it comes with all the carbon fiber mounting plates as well, which is a huge time saver when you're trying to maintain these parts, which is also just an awesome upgrade. You have the aluminum steering linkage here. Just a really high quality build. It comes with sway bars. These are a little on the thin side from what I understand. So if you're going to be running on carpet, I would get thicker sway bars out the box. This is all it comes with, and they're pretty thin, excuse me. But they should get the job done for a dirt application. But yeah, guys, I mean, everything was, I was super blown away by just the overall build. I was very, it's very rewarding. It is. I get why people like doing the kits. Now, for a beginner, would I recommend this kit? I would if under a couple, only if you have, number one, a good tool set, and number two, I would have some readily accessible help. My dad has built many of these kits, so I was able to reach out to him with any questions I had. I wouldn't do this kit if you're just kind of going to wing it. Obviously, there's guys on YouTube and stuff that'll help you out, but I don't know. It seems to me pretty advanced, especially when you're building the center diff, front diff, rear diff, as opposed to just the rear on like a 2-wheel drive. I think a 2-wheel drive is probably a better place to start with a kit, but I think it's definitely doable. I do think it's doable. I don't think it's crazy hard. I do think you do need to, it's going to be time consuming. It's not just the build itself, but researching and, really paying attention to what you're doing, taking the time to do it right. But I do think, yes, if you're confident in your building, your mechanical skills, go for it, man. I built it. If you had told me 3 months ago that I built this car, I wouldn't have believed you. And I built it in a couple days. So, overall, guys, I loved it, man. I loved the experience. Had a great time with it. Outside of the chip bearings, I mean, it was pretty smooth. I went ahead and ordered some off ProTech. Just some cheap replacement ones. And my dad ended up having these, so I ended up just using these Trinities instead. So it kind of was convenient. It didn't really slow down the build. But had I not had those on hand, it would have slowed down the build by, I just got the replacement today. So you may want to have something like that on hand, or if you have a tool that you're confident in, getting those bearings in there, then you should be fine. I also got the chassis covered today, which is pretty cool. Obviously, most people are going to want to run something like this. It's interesting how thin the chassis really is. I mean, it's a very thin chassis. Most of the mudguards extend it out quite a bit. It's a very thin platform. It's a little bit heavier than my 2-wheel drive, but not as much as I would expect it to be. So pretty damn cool build, guys. I'm happy. I'm happy I completed it. If you have any questions on anything about this kit, feel free to let me know. I mean, I'm not an expert by any means, but I'd be happy to share my experience with it. As far as the electronics of this thing, I know I'm going to run. Unfortunately, there's a couple of the things I'm going to be running are out of stock. I'm hoping sometime in September is when it says they're coming in stock. So I'm hoping sooner than later they get in. I'm going to be running a Tekin motor, 13.5, a Futaba receiver. I have a ProTech 140T servo. Same servo that's going to be that's on my 2-wheel drive. I just love those servos, man. I don't think you can beat them for the price. And I'm going to be running a Hobby Wing XR10 Pro, the Stealth. I think it's a Stealth edition. That's one that has like a black aluminum mounted fan. The reason I want to do that is just because it's a cased fan that's already on the ESC. I was going to go with the Tekin RSX Pro, but it's like an attachable fan, and I've heard some horror stories about them popping off, and I just don't want to deal with that, to be honest. I think the Hobby Wing, the aluminum case fan, plus is already soldered, a lot cleaner than anything I could do. So I think I'm just going to go that route, try the Hobby Wing out, see how it goes. But I'm definitely going to go with the Tekin motor, and then I'm going to get the 5600 Trinity battery. And that's basically going to be running. It's a pretty similar build to my 22.5, just a different ESC. But I'm excited, man. So keep an eye out, guys. I'm gonna do as soon as I get this thing down to the track, I'm gonna do a full review like it is my 5.0. Just breaking down what I liked. You know, just a full review of how the electronics performed. Next video I'll be posting is I have the carpet race coming up this weekend, so I'm gonna be posting up the results. Hopefully I'll get some footage of it. I'll post the results and, you know, my thoughts, my experience with that, and hopefully, like I said, get some actual racing results. I know just looking at the desk is kind of boring. So thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, if you have any questions or comments, whatever, feel free to let me know. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And thanks for coming by. Have a good day.